Welcome back, America, to Sound Retirement Radio, where we bring you concepts, ideas, and strategies designed to help you achieve clarity, confidence, and freedom as you prepare for and transition through retirement. And now, here is your host, Jason Parker.
America, welcome back to another round of Sound Retirement Radio, episode number 429, Unlock Retirement Confidence. The three numbers you must know if you're on this retirement journey and you're looking to achieve more confidence as you prepare for retirement. All right, so as we get into today's podcast, there are two ways that I like to start the day. The first is by renewing our mind, and this verse comes to us from John 14, verse 27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. And then, of course, something fun for the grandkids. Did you hear about the walnut at the cashew party? It was nuts. What do you call two ducks and a cow? Quackers and milk. So it was my good fortune recently to be interviewed on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast with Ashley Micciche. And she's just really got a great, authentic genuineness about her. She does a daily podcast. These are short, maybe 5 minutes at most, where she's just giving you a tidbit, a financial tidbit to live a better life. And in today's podcast, we talk about unlocking retirement confidence, the three numbers you must know if you're on this retirement journey and you want to do it right. I know you're going to love this episode. And so without any further ado, here is my episode with Ashley Micciche from the Retirement Quick Tips podcast.
Welcome to a new week here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Micciche, and I am very blessed this week because I have a guest, Jason Parker. He is the host of Sound Retirement Radio, and I actually reached out to Jason because I love listening to his podcast. It's on the exact same topic of what we cover here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. He's a best-selling author. He created the Retirement Calculator. He is the host of Sound Retirement Radio, a popular podcast with more than 1 million downloads. He's also been a frequent guest on ABC, Fox, NBC. He has earned the designation of a retirement income certified professional. Jason is also the president of Parker Financial LLC. They're an independent, fee-only, registered investment advisory firm operating as a fiduciary. I love that. That's exactly what we do. I love fiduciaries. There's not many of them, believe it or not. And so I'm excited because Jason is going to talk about the three numbers that you must know to retire with confidence. But before we do that, Jason, I was hoping that you could just tell me how you got started with the podcast in the first place.
Ashley, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your show. I'm really excited to be here today. The genesis, the origin of the podcast started, I joined the local Chamber of Commerce. And when I joined the Chamber of Commerce, there was a local radio show. And the gentleman that ran that local radio station, he invited me. He did a show where he featured new members of the Chamber of Commerce. And so he said, "Hey, I'd love to talk about Parker Financial and what you do." And I said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to be a guest on your radio show." And I have to tell you, Ashley, I was so nervous during that radio interview, that first one. My voice was cracking and it was really bad. It was only like 6 minutes long, but it seemed like the longest 6 minutes of my life. And totally outside my comfort zone, something I had never done before. But after that radio interview, he said, "Hey, Jason, we're looking to add a financial to the radio station. Would you be interested in hosting a 30-minute show once a week on retirement topics?" And so that's how I got started. And it started out as a radio show before it became a podcast. But I enjoyed listening to podcasts back in those days. And so I said every week I would go into the local radio station and I would ask them for the MP3 file. And then they would give me the MP3 file. So I would just take the radio show that we recorded and I would upload it as a podcast. And so that's how it got started. It was not intentional.
Interesting. So the 6 minutes was terrifying, but you were like, yeah, let's do it. 30 minutes every single week.
And like you're really good at this monologue, getting in there and talking by yourself and just sharing ideas with your listeners. I've been listening to your show, but that was not easy for me. So I started out with this 30-minute block of time that I had to fill up and I had to talk for 30 minutes. Really, really challenging. Then shortly after that, I had a PR company or a PR firm for the Social Security Administration reach out to us. And they said, "Hey, we've got this Social Security expert. He's He's the Western Washington public affairs specialist. Would you be interested in having him as a guest on the radio show? And I said, yes, I'd love to talk to somebody instead of me just talking for 30 minutes straight. And so today, I would say the podcast is a mix. I personally prefer when we can bring guests on and I can interview them. I love learning from people and I love learning their perspective. And then some of the shows are just talking to people, sharing with them what we're learning and things that they should know as they're preparing for retirement.
Yeah. Okay. And for the benefit of our listeners who they're, at least when they listen to my podcast, they're used to the short form content, but I know that they listen to lots of longer form podcasts. So it's a mix of monologue and interview style, but then about how long are most of your episodes?
That was one of the great things about not doing the radio. So several years ago, I decided to stop doing the radio show and we only do the podcast now. But when we did that radio show, it's like everything was so structured. You had an introduction and then you had to talk for a certain amount of time. And then there was a commercial break. And the thing I love about the podcast is I don't have all those limitations and restrictions. I can just talk for as much time as needed to share whatever information I feel is relevant for people. And sometimes that's an hour-long conversation with somebody, and sometimes it's a 12-minute, here's a tip, something you need to know about. So it's all over the place. There's no consistency when it comes to time, just however much time is needed to share what I hope to share with people.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about you said the 3 numbers you must know to retire with confidence. How would you define confidence? If you were going to retire today and feel confident, like what are the things that come to mind in order to really make that transition? So maybe we can talk about that first, just defining what you mean when you say retire with confidence.
I'm so glad you asked that question because there's really 3 things that we're always trying to, every time that I get an opportunity to speak, or if I'm on television, or if I'm speaking at a local event, the 3 things that we want to deliver to people are clarity, to know what's most important, confidence, to know the numbers are going to work. And when you have clarity about what's most important in your life and you know that the numbers are going to work, then you can experience freedom, and freedom from fear, freedom from greed, freedom from worry, freedom to go out and live your best life and spend your time with the people that are most important to you. But on the confidence side of things, I think it's 2 parts. I think part of it's education. You have to learn about this industry. You have to learn about money. You have to learn about investing. A lot of people really aren't interested in that topic. There's a lot of people where finance is not the thing that's most important to them. And that's okay. That's why there's people like you and me that can help people in that area of their life on the financial side. So part of it's education. The other part, though, is actually crunching the numbers, especially if you're getting ready to retire. This is the biggest financial transition in people's life. And most people don't want to go back to work after they retire. So you've got to get this right. And there's a lot of decisions, a lot of micro decisions to be made when it comes to retirement planning and investment management, and what insurance should you have? And when can you retire? Have you saved enough to retire? Are you going to run out of money in retirement? These are a lot of the questions that people have. And so the only way that I know to do that and to be able to give people that confidence is to crunch the numbers using some kind of software. And as you mentioned in the introduction, that's been one of my passion projects. It started with the radio show and then it became the podcast. And then after the podcast, I've written 2 books on the topic of retirement planning. And then about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I started building software to help more people develop confidence as they're heading into retirement. And however people get there, whether they're working with an advisor or they're more of the DIY, the do-it-yourselfer, and they're just looking to create a plan, we want to educate them, but we also want to give them the tools to empower them. And I'm on a mission to democratize retirement because unfortunately, there are advisors, but many advisors have investment minimums. It may be $500,000 or $1 million. Or listening to a guy the other day, he has a $2 million investment minimum. And so there's a lot of people that would love advice. They would love to have that confidence heading into retirement, but they don't have that much money to work with. And so I think that's one of the beautiful things about software is we can serve a lot of people if they're willing to take a little bit of time and enter numbers on their own.
So how would someone access that calculator that you're talking about? Where would they go to get that?
Yeah, it's software as a service. It lives in the cloud. It's just retirementbudgetcalculator.com.
Love it. Good name. It's always nice to have a nice, clear name, easy to find. I'll be sure to link to that as well so people can find that. You said something. Oh, yeah. The other thing that I think is hard for people to wrap their heads around. You and I do this all day long. So we could see how different things about retirement, different aspects of retirement might impact each other. So if you take just if you look at the one decision of Social Security, that one decision, if you take it earlier or later, what age do you take it? That has a ripple effect on a lot of other decisions that you make. And so it is really important, like you were saying, I think, to crunch the numbers, because your decision to take Social Security at retirement versus maybe waiting another year or 2 years or until 70, that one decision alone can have a huge impact. And that's not obviously the only decision you make in retirement. There's a lot of different levers that you can pull. And that's why it's so important to run the numbers, because then you can say, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to live off of less? And because you really have to retire today and you really want to, or maybe you have a health reason that you need to retire today. Or are you willing to work a little bit longer so that you can live the lifestyle and have the income that you want in retirement? And it is hard to figure that out without running the numbers on it, like you were saying.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up Social Security, because this is almost everybody in America is paid into Social Security. And so you want to get as much money back out of that program as you can. But I don't think people really understand all those implications. So Social Security is tax efficient income. It's inflation adjusted income. There are spousal benefits. There are survivor benefits. There's delayed retirement credits. You can start it at 60 if you're widowed, 62 if it's early retirement, 67 for most people for retirement age, earned 8% delayed retirement credits up to age 70. Those are things that people commonly know about Social Security. But what I don't think a lot of people realize that it's tax efficient income. So you've got the provisional income rules that say in a worst case scenario, 85 cents of every dollar is taxable. And if you structure your income properly, maybe none of your Social Security is taxable. So it's a big range of taxation in terms of how your Social Security can be taxed. But the other thing that we found when it comes to Social Security is it really depends on what people's motivation are, what their goals are for retirement. So if you come to me and you say, hey, Jason, I want to get the most money out of Social Security possible over two people's lifetimes. Okay, we can look at how do we structure Social Security to get the most money out of two people's lifetimes. If you come to me and you say, Jason, I want to die with the most money possible, so it's really important to me that we leave the biggest nest egg to our family. That's a completely different equation. If that's the goal, then maybe we don't want to try to get every dollar out of Social Security. If you come to me and you say, Jason, the most important thing to me is how do we pay the least amount of money in taxes over our lifetime? Again, that's a different element of this planning process. And so you're right. Social Security is a huge. Oh, the other thing is, Chris, this is especially for people that are retiring early. If you're retiring at, say, 60 or 62, a lot of people have to private pay for their health insurance leading up to age 65. And if you turn on Social Security early, that might impact whether or not you can qualify for the Affordable Care Act credits and pay less money for your health insurance in those early years. And I know I'm preaching to the choir for you, Ashley, all of this stuff, but your listeners don't necessarily know that they could end up paying $2,000 a month for health insurance from 60 to 65. Or if they structure their income properly and they're taking money out of a savings account that's already been taxed to supplement their cash flow, they don't start Social Security. They could pay a lot less money for their health insurance under the Affordable Care Act leading up to that. So there's so many different things that play into that one decision. Like you said, it's all interconnected, and we have to know what the goals are, and that we can help people understand what's the best option for them. We just met with a gentleman recently. And the other thing you have to think about is life expectancy when it comes to Social Security.
Yeah, that's huge.
You have a history of longevity in your family. Everybody lives to 100. Then we need to plan for that. But in this guy's case, he came in and he said, Jason, everybody in my family dies at 82. He said, the chances of me living beyond 82 are very slim. And so that's part of the analysis you want to do too, is you want to say, okay, if I live to life expectancy, how much money am I going to have, or what's the best claiming strategy? Or if I live to age 100 and I live a long time, what's the best strategy? And you have to really think through all of these different moving parts to come up with the best strategy for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's tricky. And I think a lot of people, once you go down the rabbit hole of looking into it more and researching it more and trying to figure it out, then it becomes overwhelming too, because you don't want to make a mistake. And these are big potential mistakes that that you could make. So yeah, we want to avoid that to the extent that that's possible. Okay,
Yeah,
so oh, sorry, go back.
I was
Go
going to say,
ahead.
in terms of financial mistake, for some people, the decision on Social Security can be the difference between whether or not they've saved enough to live comfortably for the rest of their life, or if they're going to run out of money early. Yeah, and it could
Mm-hmm.
be a couple of $100,000 or more of additional lifetime income, depending on the choices that you make. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a huge, huge decision. And again, I think it's one of the reasons when people are getting ready to retire that they do start looking for some additional help because there are a lot of moving parts.
Okay, so let's go back to the topic at hand. So you said three numbers that people need to retire with confidence. So what would be that first number?
Okay, so I just talked about all the moving parts and how complicated this can be, but one of the things I'm always trying to do is simplify it. How can we make it as easy as possible for people to achieve three things: clarity, confidence, and freedom? And so we've narrowed it down to just three numbers, which are: how much do you spend? So you have to have some idea how much money you're spending every month or every year. How much money have you saved? And then how long are you going to live? Those are the three numbers. If we can simplify retirement down to just three numbers that everybody has to have some idea on, if we can create a plan around those three numbers, then that is going to be a great starting point. And really, you're going to be able to make some really intelligent decisions about whether or not you're in a position to be able to retire, and to know that you won't run out of money in retirement if you know those three numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start with the first one. How much you spend. I don't know about you, Jason, probably similar experience. I have some clients who they can tell me exactly what they spend every month down to the penny.
Mhm.
And while they're still working, but then when you transition into retirement, obviously that number will change. And so even if people were good at budgeting while they were working and keeping track of their expenses, sometimes it's hard to figure out how that number is going to change. And then you have people on the other side of the spectrum. And I would say, I don't know, my clients are split 50-50. Like they have this vague idea of what they spend, but they really don't know. So then when we're trying to estimate their expenses and what their spending is going to look like in retirement, a lot of it is just guesswork. So how do you drill down to that number and get an accurate picture or an idea of what the likely spend rate is going to look like in retirement?
Yeah, so good. And you're right. It's not constant. It's going to change. It's probably going to be higher when you first retire. And then it probably is going to taper down somewhere in the middle of retirement. And then those expenses will probably jump up again towards the end of retirement as you start experiencing more medical issues. But it's the most important number, in my opinion, from a retirement plan: how much you spend. If you don't know that number, it's impossible for an advisor or anybody to be able to answer the question of, have you saved enough? Are you going to be okay?
Yeah,
And
I completely agree.
yeah, and some of those numbers are a mystery, but some of it is pretty well known. So if you're going into retirement and you have a mortgage, you pay that mortgage every month. You know exactly how much you're paying, and your advisor could look at your statement, help you understand how much is going to taxes and insurance and how much is going to principal and interest. You go to the grocery store, people buy food, they go out dining out, they put gas in their car. They have an electric bill, a water bill, a garbage bill. Some of these expenses are things that people have been paying their entire lives. That is not a mystery. That's going to be pretty constant. And we call those essential expenses. And then you've got the discretionary expenses. So those are going to be things you like to spend money on, like maybe you have a Netflix subscription, or maybe you plan on traveling, or you want to spoil the grandkids, or whatever some of those extras are. Those are going to be things that if you had to live without them, you could. And Ashley, this is the reason that I invented the retirement budget calculator, because what I found in our industry was most of the tools that were developed for advisors were based on how much money have you saved, and then using something like the 4% withdrawal rule to try to estimate people's spending. And if you're trying to deliver confidence to people, it's really not a great way to plan, because it's all about, there's so many unknowns when it comes to the 4% withdrawal rule. There's so many unknowns about how the market's actually going to perform and how the asset allocation is going to work, and how it just, to me, it created too many uncertainties about, have you really saved enough to be able to retire with confidence? And so the retirement budget calculator, you can use this portion of the calculator for free. So people that are trying to really understand their spending, we have it broken down by categories, and we have a bunch of template data in there that people can go in and they can see, oh, these are things that I need to be thinking about when it comes to my retirement spending. And like I say, you can develop a spending plan, a budget for free within the retirement budget calculator.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
just understanding that spending number, understanding that you should mark some expenses as essential. That's the money you can't live without. Some expenses is discretionary. That's money that if you had to live without it, you could, but you could keep the lights on and still have food on the table. And once we know that number, then it's really easy to start to say, okay, have we saved enough? Are we going to be okay? And then some of these other micro decisions like the asset allocation, and are you going to overweight value companies? Are you going to overweight small cap? Are you going to overweight profitability? And some of the decisions that people need to make on the investment side of things just get to be a lot easier if you're going to diversify your money across time segments and have buckets. Like I say, a lot of micro decisions, but we really want to keep it simple and say, what's your spending? Once we know how much your spending is, then we can look at your investments and see how much money you've saved, all of your different retirement accounts and cash accounts. And then we would need to make a projection for life expectancy, how long we think you're going to live.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's dive deeper into the how much have you saved. So how would someone know? Obviously, their spending goes into that because what they save in combination with other factors like their Social Security income, maybe if they're fortunate enough to have pension income, those help to supplement the savings. But how does somebody know how much they've saved or if that's enough?
Yeah, your net worth. And your net worth, of course, it includes liquid assets, money that you can use to supplement your cash flow, and non-liquid assets. So I'll never forget one time a guy came into the office and he said, Jason, look at this spreadsheet that I created. He said, we're never going to run out of money. But what he had done was he had included the value of his house as an asset that could be drawn down. He had no plans to sell the asset. He wasn't going to take out a reverse mortgage, but he had mistakenly not broken out the difference between his liquid investable assets, the money that could actually supplement his cash flow versus the value of his real estate. And obviously when you took the real estate asset out of there, the spreadsheet didn't look too good. So people can make mistakes when they're trying to do this on their own. It's always amazing to me, Ashley, when I do meet with people, so many people have no idea how much they've saved for retirement.
Yeah, because it's all in different places and they've never taken the time to go through and consolidate everything.
Yeah, it's amazing. Many times we'll sit down with people and we'll add it all up for them and we'll be like, boy, you're a millionaire. And they had no idea that they had that many resources.
Yeah, I've had that too. Yeah, it's pretty common. That's funny.
This is another free tool that we make available in the retirement budget calculator is we have a net worth tab. So you can enter your assets and liabilities. We have it broken down between liquid investable assets and then real estate. So that you can see exactly what is your net worth? What is the difference between your assets and liabilities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other challenge with that, whether someone consolidates their assets with me or elsewhere and wants to DIY their investments, I always recommend don't let different accounts float out there and stay at different places. It creates complexities, especially if you're taking distributions like retirement distributions, but more so just tracking like the simple task of how is my portfolio doing? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And that seems like a simple thing to do, but if you have 10 different accounts in 10 different places, you have to have an algorithm spreadsheet situation just to figure out, are my investments growing? What is my net worth? What can I draw from that? Yeah, I think just knowing that number for a lot of people is a task in itself.
Simplification is important. If you can just simplify your financial life as you're getting ready to head into retirement, a great retirement should be spending a lot of time doing a lot of fun things and very little time with financial planning and investment management. That's not how I think most people envision spending their time in retirement. That's why they hire people like you so that they don't have to spend their time with all the investment management and the financial planning. They can just meet with you and you can let them know if they're on a good path and if it's going to work and if they can stay retired, which is what most people want. Yeah, and to your point about whether or not they hire a financial advisor or they do it yourself, I'm a huge fan of the advisor community. I know that advisors add a ton of value to people's lives. And I don't just know that because like you, we walk life with people, but I know it because that's what all of the research studies have shown. So there's the Cyrano Institute out of Canada they did this 15-year study where they found that people that worked with advisors versus people that didn't work with advisors had three times more assets for the people that worked with advisors compared to the people that didn't work with advisors. Of course, Vanguard's Advisor Alpha shows that people, and I had Todd Schlanger from Vanguard on Sound Retirement Radio. He said on average, people that work with advisors end up with 3% more per year net than people that don't work with advisors. So
and that's a small number, the 3%, but when you extrapolate that over 10, 20, 30-year retirement, that is huge. Or depending on what you're starting with, you're talking about a difference of well into the six figures. It's amazing how 3% a year, you could, over a 30-year time period, that could be a $1 million difference. It's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. Like I say, that Cyrano Institute said it was about I think it was maybe 3.9 times more assets that people have that worked with advisors. Morningstar did a study. Again, their number was about 2%. Envestnet's done a study. BlackRock's done a study. So every study that's been done basically that shows that people that work with advisors versus people that don't work with advisors is that people that work with advisors end up in a better situation. But again, the challenge we have in America right now is that there's a lot of people that would love to work with an advisor and they can't find an advisor that wants to work with them, or they don't have the resources, they don't have enough investment minimums, or they don't have the money to pay an advisor. So from my standpoint, it's okay, how can we help as many people as possible? And I think that's what software allows us to do. It allows every American, regardless of how much money they've saved, to have a really good, to just be able to create more confidence for themselves as they're getting ready to head into retirement. We know that wealthy people hire advisors. Most of the people that I serve are probably considered the top 5% of, top 10% of people in our country. They tend to be the wealthier people. And so wealthy people hire advisors because they want to pay less money in taxes. And they want more money to go to the things that they care about. They want to support their kids and their grandkids. And, I love the fact that we can serve that demographic and that population, but I just love the idea that maybe people that haven't saved $1 million for retirement, that they can have a really great retirement too.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that's a big reason why I love doing the podcast, is because whether someone ends up ever working with me or not, my hope is that I'm helping them. They're better off because they listen to the podcast. So, okay. So the last number you talked about had to do with longevity. So talk a little bit about why that number matters so much.
I'll tell you, the first time when we built the calculator, this was a little bit grim, but we would show people how many days that they had lived in the calculator. And then we would show them based on life expectancy, how many days they had remaining. So
if you're doing it at 60, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have that much time left. It doesn't seem like, that much if you or looking at it in terms of days. We all know how fast a day goes by.
Oh man. Boy, do we ever. But yeah, so I think the number was, if you made it to age 65, you had lived 23,725 days. And if you lived to life expectancy, you had 6,205 days remaining. This was not a very popular feature in the calculator.
I feel like 6,000 days. No, let's spend it all now. Let's go for broke.
That was the idea. Like, the reason I structured it that way is because I wanted to create urgency in people's lives. It's like people live like they have forever to go do the things that they want to do. And we don't have forever. I want people to live with a sense of urgency, but I think it was making people depressed. So we removed that. But from life expectancy, we always like to start with Social Security mortality tables. That gives us, we know 50% of people are going to live that long, 50% will die before, and 50% will die later than what the Social Security mortality tables show us. Once we have some idea for life expectancy, a guy that's my age, Social Security says I'm going to live to about age 80 right now. But I know that I've got family members that have lived well into their 90s. So what you need to do is you need to take stock of your own health and also your family history and make adjustments to the average. So if you know that everybody in your family's made it to age 92, maybe we need to be planning to age 92. The other thing that's really exciting right now is medicine, science, technology are getting better all the time. And these advancements in medicine are going to keep people alive longer. Whether or not that's necessarily a high quality of life is a different story. But I'm really optimistic about some of the advancements that are happening in science. I read a great book by Peter Diamandis and Tony Robbins called Life Force. And it was really eye-opening because it's not a topic that I follow closely. But the purpose of this book was to go out and interview some of the top doctors in our country and top researchers to talk about what's happening in the medical community. And it's very inspiring, very encouraging to see the advancements that are being made in longevity, and not just lifespan, how long you're going to live, but how healthy you're going to be later into later years. And I don't know if I think I did. I think I saw in your email that you mentioned you started playing pickleball recently.
Yeah.
And I'm also a pickleball player. I have been for the last 2 years or so. But it is so humbling to walk out on the court and have somebody that's 80 years old and they just whoop you.
Just annihilate you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Very
had that happen. And I'm a lot faster than, I'm not fast, but like comparatively, yeah, because I'm half their age, but they still kick me butt.
I love that though. I love that we can be active. And a friend of mine, he just had his second knee replacement surgery. He's in his early 60s, and he's going to be a beast on the pickleball court as a result of these advancements in medicine. It's really fun. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I find longevity and this because you run the numbers, but it's always shocking, I think, when you really play around with that lever and you say, okay, if we only plan that you're going to live to 82, let's say, the numbers usually look pretty great. But if you plan that you might live to 92, then that changes things. And it is a real risk that you could live longer than you expect. I think, I don't know what your anecdotal experience has been, but in my experience, I think people expect that they're going to live not as long as they actually live. So they think I'm only going to live to 75 or 80 or 85 at most. Like that, if I live to 85, that would be longer than any of my parents, grandparents, etc. But then they live to 90, 92, 98. And then that's when you start running the real risk of running out of money is that we maybe only planned for a 20 or 25 year retirement at most, but then you're needing to make your money last for 30 or 35 years.
Right.
And then that changes, the longevity issue changes a lot of those decisions and that's I think of all the numbers, that's the hardest one because obviously no one knows our expiration date. But if you're planning and making decisions about Social Security and how much income you're going to take from your investments and all these other factors with a set expiration date in mind, and that doesn't work out, then you could be going back to the drawing board later on. So how do you deal with the sheer uncertainty of nobody knows when they're going to die and nobody knows how long they're going to live?
Yeah. I always like to say, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And planning for the worst from a longevity standpoint means that you're going to make it to age 100. No, I don't know about you, but, and we serve a lot of families, but I have not personally had anybody make it all the way to age 100 in all the families we serve. And I think the statistic is 2% of all Americans will make it to age 100. Now, my experience has been when I'm talking to people, they'll tell me, boy, they eat right, they exercise, they have longevity in their family. Everybody tells me they're going to make it to age 100. I just haven't had the experience yet of walking life with anyone who has actually made it to age 100.
Interesting. Yeah.
But from a planning standpoint, you're right. The right thing to do there is to assume that you're going to live a long time. One of the mistakes, though, that I see people make, and again, this was one of the reasons I designed the retirement budget calculator, was because people think, oh, I've got this much money in expenses, and those expenses are going to compound and those expenses are going to grow at 3% per year, or whatever the inflation factor is, for forever. And that's really not the case. There's a lot, when you get older, I see couples that they split a meal when they go out, or when they get into their 80s, they just don't want to travel as much as they used to, or sometimes it's 90s when that scales back. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is to be able to show people, okay, well, you're going to spend more in the early years of retirement. Let's make sure that we calculate that, put that into the calculator, and that spending is going to come to an end at a future point. And then you're going to have, you may not be spending as much. When you lose a spouse, that's another time. Travel, all of a sudden, it's not as much fun when you're doing it on your own. So we see people's life get simple. I remember my mentor, my friend Dean, who He and I worked together for 15 years, and he hired me when I was in my mid-20s, and he was in his mid-60s. And he died a couple of years ago. But his mom actually was somebody who made it to age 100. And but at the end of her life, the only income she had was like $1,500 a month coming in from Social Security. And she was able to save money every month as a result with that income coming in, because she would go to church on Sunday. She didn't spend a lot of time out. She didn't eat a lot at age 100. And Dean was always amazed at how much that his mom was able to save money when she only had $50 a month coming in. It's certainly true that living a long time is a big risk, and especially if you have a lot of medical expenses towards the end of your life. But to think that what you're spending at 60 is going to be the same as what you're spending at age 100, I think is a mistake that I see a lot of people make. And that's some of that granularity that you want to get into in the planning, where you want to be able to say, yes, I'm probably going to spend more on travel the first 15 or 20 years of retirement, but I may not be spending that much on travel every year after that.
Exactly. Okay, so to recap, we have what your expenses and what your spending is going to be in retirement, how much you've saved, how much money you have, and then how long you're going to live, or your longevity. Jason, where can people find you? Where can they find your podcast? Where can they find your retirement calculator? All of that.
Yeah, the website is soundretirementplanning.com. That's where they can listen to the podcast that I've been doing. And it's a great place just to learn about all things retirement. It's been my focus for I've been doing that podcast now for 15 years. So a lot of content.
That's like old school. You're like a pioneer.
I know. Yeah. I've got the gray hair to prove it too. Yeah. And reading glasses. That's the latest of it. And then the retirementbudgetcalculator.com. Again, software as a service. There's a premium version that you pay for, and then there's a free version. The free version lets you create a budget for free. A retirement spending plan. It also lets you calculate your net worth, so you can put in assets and liabilities. And you can put your birthday in there. I'll give you your average life expectancy based on the Social Security mortality table. So that's all free. The premium version of the calculator, though, if you want to actually project out cash flow into the future, you have to pay either $9.95 a month to have the premium version, or $95 a year. So there's a cost if you want some of the more advanced features.
Okay, great. Jason, thank you so much for being a guest. This was a lot of fun talking to you, and you're so bright, and you think about all these things from different angles, and people need that. They need to consider, have you thought about this or that? And so I really appreciate all the knowledge that you've brought to our listeners today. Thank you so much.
Ashley, thank you. Thank you for doing the work to educate our community and people that are getting ready for retirement, and for being willing to take on the responsibility of being an advisor. There's not enough people, and a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the advisor community is in that retirement age themselves. They're getting ready to transition into retirement. So we've got a shortage of advisors. And if people are lucky enough to find somebody that will serve them, boy, what a blessing that is. So thank you for being willing to do both parts, educate and walk life with people. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I love it.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Sound Retirement Radio. For articles, links, and resources from today's show, visit soundretirementplanning.com. If you enjoy the podcast, share it with a friend and give us a 5-star review. Ready to kickstart your retirement planning? Head over to retirementbudgetcalculator.com. Need assistance with investment management? Explore our services at parker-financial.net. Information and opinions expressed here are believed to be accurate and complete, for general information only, and should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or financial advice for any individual, and does not constitute a solicitation for any securities or insurance products. Please consult with your financial professional before taking action on anything discussed in this program. Parker Financial, its representatives, or its affiliates have no liability for investment decisions or other actions taken or made by you based on the information provided in this program. All insurance-related discussions are subject to the claims-paying ability of the company. Investing involves risk. Jason Parker is the president of Parker Financial LLC, an independent fee-based wealth management firm located at 9230 Bayshore Drive Northwest, Suite 201, Silverdale, Washington. For additional information, call 360-337-2701 or visit us online at soundretirementplanning.com.